What's going on, everybody? It's yours truly, Coach Mike Dub, here with another edition of the Lockdown Defense Sports Studio. And of course, we're keeping things rolling around as we're going around the biggest headlines through each division. We're only a few weeks away from the start of kickoff for the start of the season, I should say. So we're wrapping things up today. We're going to be talking about the NFC South, what things to look out for from each team, what questions each team has to answer. And really, we want to get you guys' feedback as well. We know we got some fans from all over the NFL, maybe some Bucks fans. We've heard from some of the Saints fans throughout the offseason. So we want to hear your thoughts on the season and on the questions that we're going to ask as well. So we're going to jump right into it. We got a lot of things to cover. Great division. The NFC South is always competitive. So we're going to start out with the Carolina Panthers, right? So this is a team that finished the year pretty strong last year. Of course, they weren't really in the top of the division for the past few years. Obviously, drafting pretty high, getting Bryce Young a few years ago. They actually pulled him from the starting lineup, went with Andy Dalton for a little while, trying to figure things out. But it seems like they got things rolling towards the end of the season last year. So heading into this season, what's the biggest question that we feel like the Panthers have to answer? And it starts with their offense, right? Have they finally found their groove on offense? I mentioned the fact that they pulled their franchise quarterback, for a few games, and they weren't giving up on him. Obviously, they weren't, throwing in the towel and saying that it was a bad pick or anything like that. But I think they just had to press reset. Give him some time to mature a little bit, get some time for the chemistry to kind of get clicking with the offense altogether. But they were clearly looking for some type of continuity, looking for some type of identity, looking for some type of mold that they can kind of hang their hat on as a team. So the last 2 years they drafted wide receivers in the first round. They really kind of poured into that offense, trying to figure out if they can get something consistent going, get an identity going, and be able to compete for the AFC or the NFC South, I should say. So have they addressed it? Have they finally found their groove on offense? That's the question. My answer is yes. And these are the three main reasons why I feel like they have. Number one, we talked about Bryce Young. He really came into his own at the end of last year. I think he's finally found his stride. He's looking like a much more comfortable quarterback. He's looking like a competent quarterback. He's looking like he is who they drafted him to be. He will be the quarterback of the future. I like the way that he took command of the offense. Great pocket awareness towards the end of the season as well last year. The offensive line for the Panthers really is probably one of the more underrated units, not only in the NFC South but also in the NFL. They really did a pretty good job of protecting and keeping Bryce Young upright, and Bryce Young, did a great job of complimenting them by not holding the ball too long and just keeping a rhythm going on for that offense. Now, obviously, they got off to a slow start, so they weren't able to take things to that next level last year. But I like where Bryce Young is headed. I think that he's poised to kind of take that team to the next step. Another reason why I feel like that this offense has finally found their groove. We talked about them drafting two wide receivers in back-to-back years in the first round. Obviously, Xavier Leggett last year, and then Tet McMillan from Arizona this year, who has had an amazing camp. He's been wowing people left and right. He looks like he's going to be their number one receiver. He's going to be the guy in Carolina. He's going to be a huge target for Bryce Young, and I think that's just what they needed. Xavier Leggett had a decent rookie campaign, but I don't think he was going to be the guy. So now they have a nice 1-2 punch. They complement each other. Two big body, physical wide receivers, great targets. I think this is exactly what you need. Also to spread to stretch the field and keep defenses honest. And part of the reason why you want to do that is because of this man right here on the end, number 30, Chuba Hubbard, who is also off to a great start last year, had a great year before ending the year with an injury. So as long as Chuba Hubbard can stay healthy, then I think that gives them a nice, well-rounded rushing attack. He's definitely a threat. Is one of the better backs in the NFC. So once again, as long as he can stay healthy, they feed him the rock. I think that this team could really make some good progress. I see them as a team that can compete for the NFC South title. They may be a playoff team. You heard it here first. I like what the Panthers are doing. And a big part of it is because I do feel like their offense has found their groove. They found some consistency, and I think they'll be a team that'll compete well in the NFC. So next, we're going to move right on down to Atlanta. Atlanta, Another team that has been, traditionally pretty good contenders in the NFC South. When they're down, they don't stay down for too long. They're normally a pretty reputable team, and I don't think this year will be any different. Last year, they ended out the year. They had some struggles. Once again, there's another team that had some quarterback changes. They drafted Penix in the first round last year, shocked a lot of people because they also signed Kirk Cousins. So kind of took people, off guard with what direction they were headed last year. So I think they had a lot more questions to answer last year than they do this year. But coming into this year, the biggest question that I see for the Falcons they need to answer is, are their defensive additions enough to win the NFC South? We talked about their offense. We talked about them, making the change to Penix. They went on a little slide when they had Cousins. They made the switch, and they had some tough games, had some close games, but they really struggled on the defensive side of the ball, specifically on getting a pass rush, specifically on getting off the field when they needed to. And of course, that made things hard for them. They weren't able to pull out some close games, which ultimately kept them from being in the playoffs. But they made a lot of changes in the offseason. They made some draft moves. They made some free agency moves. The question is, were these moves enough? And is their defense poised to be able to win the NFC South? My answer to that is yes. And the reason why I'll say this is because they doubled down, they tripled down, almost quadrupled down on that pass rush. Of course, they're having a versatile defensive attack this year, running multiple fronts, the 3-4 and the 43. I think they're going to experiment depending on, give teams different looks depending on who they're playing, different opportunities. But two, high draft picks at edge rusher, James Pierce and Jalen Walker. And then also adding in Leonard Floyd, who has looked pretty good. Leonard Floyd had a decent stay out in San Francisco. I think he had like 8.5 sacks last year, or something like that. So you got a vet, you got two rookies. They're going to get after the quarterback this year, or at least they plan to get after the quarterback this year. Atlanta hasn't had a really strong pass rusher in quite a long time. Their defensive secondary, AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates. This year they drafted Xavier Watts, who looks like he's going to be competing for a starting spot. So the secondary, they're poised to kind of do what they need to do. But in order for that to happen, their receivers that they're facing can't have all day. So they, once again, I say not double down, but they tripled down on improving that pass rush this year. And of course, going against Bryce Young, going against Baker Mayfield, and going against whoever will be the starting quarterback for the Saints. I think these are young quarterbacks. These are, Baker Mayfield, not so young, little mobile. But if you put pressure on these quarterbacks, then I think you can definitely increase your chances of competing, and not only in the division but in the conference. Of course, we've seen throughout the years the teams that have the best front four, the teams that can get after quarterbacks, they normally are the same teams that are competing in December and January for the latter team. So to answer the question, I think the Falcons address what they need to address on defense with their pass rush, with not one, not two, but three guys who are expected to get after the quarterback this year. And I think that makes a big difference. There were only a few games out from the playoffs last year with that horrible pass rush that they had. This year, adding the additions, Michael Penix in his second year, the offense looks like it starts to click a little bit. Raheem Morris looks like he's got things rolling down there. I think that they can be a playoff team, and I think that their defense will be improved this year. So finally, we're going to move on to the next team, the New Orleans Saints. And I think this is the team that a lot of people have at the bottom of the division on paper. A lot of people, have said that the Saints are pretty much tanking because they don't have, certain things in position. Of course, we've seen even some vets retire early on. Tyrann Mathieu decided to hang up the cleats. Who knows why? Is it because that they don't have an answer at quarterback? Is it because that they don't know what's in store for them this year? Who knows? But there are a lot of questions that could be centered around the New Orleans Saints. Once again, I think on paper specifically, but the main one we're going to go after is, what's the best case scenario for the Saints? So a lot of talk has been held about the Saints tanking, or the Saints, looking forward to trying to get Arch Manning and all these other things, right? But they're still a pro team. They still have professional players. They still have guys that get paid just like everybody else, and guys that want to win, and guys that are capable of winning. The question is, do they have the answer at quarterback? And without their quarterback, without having the answer, or without the certainty that they need at quarterback. What's their ceiling? What's the best case possible for the Saints? Can they still compete for a division title? Can it be a playoff team? Or is this season just a foregone conclusion that it's not going to go well for them, another 5-win, 6-win season for them, or even less? So what I believe that the best case scenario for the New Orleans Saints is about a 7-win team. And the reason why I say that is because they do not have their quarterback of the future on their roster. It's not Tyler Shuck and it's not Spencer Rattler. Are they going to trade for somebody? I'm not sure. And even if they did, what's the market for it? I don't think Anthony Richardson will be a good fit there. We talk about Kirk Cousins. It's possible, maybe, but of course, the type of offense and the type of things that Kellen Moore wants to run, he's going to have the right guy there, and I don't think that the right guy is currently on this roster. So, of course, that's going to be a major hurdle for them. But what I do think we'll see is I think we'll see a lot of good individual performances and potentially a strong base or a strong core moving forward. I think about guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who is having a great campaign this year in the offseason and having a great training camp. He may be able to come in, possibly have a Pro Bowl year. Chase Young getting after the quarterback. He's obviously has been underwhelming at times, but I think if he can stay healthy, and I think he still shows the potential to be an elite pass rusher, and I look for him to have a big year. And then, of course, Rashid Shaheed. He's improving his role under Kellen Moore's offense. I think he's going to be a big play guy, a gadget guy potentially. So he could have a big year. So I think the Saints have some talent on their roster. I think that they could have even multiple Pro Bowlers. Depending on how things work out with the rest of the conference. I just don't know if they have the skills collectively as a team together, specifically at the quarterback position, to be able to move the needle and to be a competitive team. And for that reason, I don't think that they'll be a playoff team. I do think that they'll finish last in the division, but I do think that we'll see some sparks. And with the right quarterback in position in the future years, we may be able to see them turn the corner. So I think the best case scenario for them is a lot of strong individual performances. Let's not forget they still have some quality vets on their team in Alvin Kamara and Cam Jordan. So maybe these guys, continue to blossom, or maybe they end up trading them if they're not competitive. Who knows? But I don't see this as a playoff team. I don't see this as a contending team. But I do see some strong individual performances, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. They may even be able to put together, a really good defense and some playmakers to complement the offense with guys like Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, and of course Alvin Kamara. So to me, that's the best case scenario for the New Orleans Saints. And finally, let's bring it on home with the defending champs, the Tampa Bay Bucks. What's the biggest question that the Bucks need to answer? And of course, it comes down to, can they win their 5th straight NFC title? They've been dominant since the days of Tom Brady when he came to Tampa Bay. They took over the division and they haven't looked back since. So will they be able to repeat? Once again, this is only a 10-win team, so it's not like they're blowing them out the water. They're not like a dominant team or anything like that. And for that reason, I think that is going to be very hard, very, very, very hard, harder than it was in the past for them to repeat, or, 5-peat, if you want to say, as NFC South champs. Todd Bowles has been pretty steady. They're going to have, a solid team. Baker Mayfield has been capable. They added Emeka Ibuka. I don't think that they got worse as a team. I think that they remain. I think they actually probably did get a little bit better as a team, but the difference is, I believe the rest of the division also got better. Once again, I mentioned the Saints. I mentioned the Falcons. I think they're right on their heels. 10 wins is not going to do it this year. So in order for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the division again, they're going to have to win 11, maybe even 12 games, I feel like, because the Panthers are right there. And like I said, the Falcons are right there. Both of those teams got a lot better this year. And 9-win season, 10-win season, 8-win season, which has traditionally got the NFC South champion into the playoffs, is not going to cut it this year, I believe. I think 10 wins, you may be looking at a wild card spot, because I really think that the top 3 teams in this division could win 11 or 12 games. So Tampa Bay could be that team. I think they can be a 12-win team. Once again, I think they made some great additions to their squad, Emeka Ibuka especially, and then also some defensive additions. So I think it's possible, but it won't happen at 10 wins. I look for this to be a much more competitive division, and I think it'll be a great division as always. So I'm looking forward to it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what's your ceiling for each fan, what's your floor for, or what's your ceiling for each team, what's your floor for each team. What questions do you have, and what answers do you have for us as we get ready to kick things off into the season? So follow us on our socials, comment, interact with us, let us know what your thoughts are. We're looking forward to getting the season started. And hopefully you guys can position your teams to be able to compete, and they'll answer some of those questions as well.